Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's talk about the famous RNP AR approaches that flight simmers are talking about so much, but where I have a feeling that some of them don't really understand what RNP AR actually means. Now, many simmers are, for example, asking on forums like, hey, can this airplane do RNP AR approaches? Well, the question is not if the airplane can do it, but if the airplane is actually certified to do it, because RNP and RNP AR are more or less the same thing, with the difference that RNP AR needs higher certification standards because the approaches are often designed in a different way. We're currently in a holding over here at Pilim in front of Madeira Airport, and we want to use this as an example of the approach criteria, of the approach design criteria of an RNP AR approach. So let's first of all go ahead and have a look into a couple of several different RNP AR charts that we can find across Europe and elsewhere. So we can start, for example, here. This is the chart for the RNP Zulu approach, runway 05 at Madeira, and as you can see it says in brackets AR behind it. Now AR stands for authorization required. That means you cannot just fly this approach like any other RNP approach just because your airplane has RNP certification, but the operator and the aircraft actually need to be certified, and in many cases the flight crew needs to do an online course or something to actually be allowed to conduct this specific approach. Reasons for that can include that the RNP AR approach may not provide a straight-in final approach like a normal RNP approach is required to do, but that it can have a curved final approach segment like we can see in the example at Madeira over here. Now, many RNP AR approaches also require specific design criteria that an operator needs to draw up in case a degradation in the navigation capabilities occurs during the approach. Now, such degradation may, for example, be because of a loss of GPS. Let's say you're flying an approach through the mountains, like this example in Queenstown in New Zealand over here, where you're diving into the valley, and if for whatever reason you lose your satellite connection and GPS goes missing, then you need a way out from this approach. Say, for example, if you're on the segment down here flying through this turn and all of a sudden your navigation displays go blank, you need an alternative, and the operator needs to draw these up. So these are not public things that are publicly available, but these need to be drawn up by the operator of the aircraft, and every company is going to have different minima there. Another nice example for an RNP AR approach is the RNP Yankee into runway 33 over at Salzburg. Some of you may be familiar with the famous circling that exists in Salzburg, and this can now be replaced by an RNP procedure. So you can simply go straight in here and then you fly that turn completely on autopilot, and it brings you out straight on the extended center line. What you will notice is that some of these approaches may have a required navigation performance of less than 0.3, and this can be because the terrain may just be too tight. Again, the RNP Zulu in Madeira is a good example where if we look at the minimums, we can see that depending on the RNP that is available in our aircraft, we can get much lower minima here. You can see the RNP 0.3 gives us a minimum of 910 feet, but if we have an RNP of 0.1, that means that at 95% of the flight time, the aircraft is able to determine its own position down to an accuracy of 0.1 nautical miles. That's what it means. Then you can already go down to a minima of 520 feet, which is really, really low, especially since this is just 374 feet above the runway elevation, and since you do come in a turn on this approach. So that's basically what this means. Now, another famous example that we can just come up with over here is the RNP Zulu runway 08 in Innsbruck. Now, many of you know the standard circling approach in Innsbruck, and obviously that one is a rather famous one. If we do have a look at it, then we have the visual approach circle to land, where you came in through the long valley over here, and then you flew that visual circling. Now, nowadays there is also an RNP Zulu available where you just come in over the valley on the opposite side. So 3.6 degree glide slope. As you can see, that is not actually too bad. So it's not actually too steep. You can fly this with most airliners, but then you just establish yourself on the runway track like 2.5 miles prior to the runway threshold, which is the reason why this can only be done as an RNP AR approach. Now, how widespread are RNP AR approaches then in the real world? Well, to be honest, not that widespread. They do exist at many airports by now, but in many cases it's only a single airline that is certified to fly them, and anyone else is still flying the conventional procedures. If we once again go back to Madeira, for example, then we can see that this beautiful all-automatic approach exists down there, but I'm not aware of any airline that is currently actually certified to fly it. There must be at least one, otherwise this procedure wouldn't exist, but the only airline that actually has crew based in Madeira is Ryanair, and they for sure are not certified for this, and maybe TAP, but the vast majority still flies the conventional approach here. Maybe the ANAV Alpha approach, which is not an RNP AR approach, which basically brings you into downwind similar to the previous VOR approach, and then you turned onto the final over here, similar to this with the VOR visual approach. That is the most widespread, this visual that airlines do fly down there. So, as you can see, RNP AR approaches do exist, but they are not used that commonly. Now, let's talk a little bit about some of the technical abilities that an airplane may have to have in order to fly RNP AR approaches. Flight simmers do seem to think that RNP AR means the same as flying a radius to fix, but that is not the case. So several different procedure types exist. For example, we have radius to turn procedures on this particular approach in Madeira, where the radius of all of these turns up here is customly defined. Now, flight simmers typically seem to think, when they ask, can this aircraft fly RNP AR approaches, they're asking, can it fly these types of legs over here? And while it is clear how that mistake can happen and how that confusion may happen, it is important to notify that many RNP approaches, so standard RNP approaches, not the IR or the AR version, do also feature these types of legs. So you can't really say, well, can this airplane fly the RNP AR into Madeira? Well, if you ask me that question for the 777, the answer is no, because the 777 can't fly to Madeira. But that is for completely different reasons. It is still capable of flying these leg types, and you can be pretty sure you will see me doing this at some point. Well, the general idea here is that there are several different types of legs. For example, you can define an inbound course, like a so-called CF leg, course to fix, where you fly, for example, on the track 203 inbound to Mike Alpha 526. That is also an RNP procedure, and well, your airplane has to be capable of doing this if you want to fly RNP AR. But conversely, you may not be certified for RNP AR, but your airplane can still do it. So, I do hope this provides a little bit of an insight there into how RNP AR procedures are constructed, and most importantly into what it actually means and what it means for you in your flight simulation. I do hope you found this one interesting. If it did, be sure to let me know in the comments below. I'm very much looking forward to your feedback. And as always, if you're up for more, don't forget to like the video, comment to let me know what you think about it, and subscribe if you don't want to miss the next upcoming video. Finally, if you really love what I'm doing, I would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. And until then, I would like to say thank you very much for watching, and I see you all again on the next one.